Tower of Monsters. One day, a disastrous event shocked the world. Numerous monsters began appearing in the tower. Humanity struggled and found itself on the verge of extinction. However, during this time, the first generation of awakeners, known as the progenitors, emerged. They faced the monster invasion head-on, demolishing and attacking the towers. Their efforts prevented the monster's invasion and secured a triumph for humanity. The progenitor became celebrated as the hero who saved the world, a legacy enshrined forever in the progenitor's mausoleum. Hundreds of years later, we meet our protagonist, Kannagi Minato. As a young boy, Kannagi frequently visited the progenitor's mausoleum library, where he enjoyed reading the biographies of the progenitors. He learned of legendary figures: a swordsman who defeated 10,000 soldiers with a single twig, and a mage who could wield all magic without reciting spells. These awakeners seemed like characters from exaggerated myths. Kannagi aspired to leave his mark on history just like them. One day, an emblem appeared in Kannagi's hand, marking him as a chosen awakener. Kannagi swore on this emblem that he would leave a legacy in history like the progenitor. This became his plan and driving force. The scene then shifts to a classroom where all the students are celebrating their success in passing the exam. In contrast, Kannagi is the one who failed. As two students leave to celebrate, they instruct Kannagi to clean up the classroom, calling him senior. They mockingly suggest that if Kannagi were truly an awakener, he should simply write his name and pass the exam, as is often said during the hunter qualification exam. Unfortunately, Kannagi had failed this exam 3 years in a row. The exam could be taken once a year for 3 years after admission, and this was Kannagi's last chance. Now, he could no longer become a hunter. While cleaning the classroom, Kannagi reflects that he had perfected the written test and had trained extensively in controlling his aura. His teacher had even confirmed that Kannagi possessed the emblem of an awakener. Now, Kannagi thinks the emblem is just a useless mark. He had aspired to be like the progenitor. Suddenly, a student comes in and tells Kannagi to come outside immediately. Outside, a man named Hisako Kaisei, an A-rank hunter, is waiting. As Kannagi runs out, the two students scold him for being late, keeping Kaisei waiting. Kaisei steps forward and admonishes the students, reminding them not to bully the weak, especially with reporters present. The students quickly apologize. The reporters ask Kaisei for a close-up coverage photo, suggesting a scene where Kaisei one-shots a dragon. Kaisei smiles and agrees, though he finds it a bit embarrassing. Kannagi reflects on Kaisei, recalling that he is a genius who entered the school 3 years ago and ranked first in all subjects. When they were in the same class, Kaisei was the one who bullied Kannagi. Frustrated, Kannagi wonders why he has to accompany Kaisei to an interview. The reporters then ask Kaisei about the person next to him. One of his subordinates informs them that the guy's name is Kannagi. Kaisei tells the reporters that Kannagi has poor grades and asked Kaisei for help, so he took time out of his training to give advice and tips. Surprised, Kannagi wonders what nonsense Kaisei is talking about. Kaisei further claims that he sometimes even provided financial help to Kannagi. Frustrated, Kannagi thinks that Kaisei should stop spouting such lies, as he actually took money from Kannagi and made his first year of life miserable. The reporters praise Kaisei for being such a good friend. Kaisei then grabs Kannagi and declares that he will definitely become an awakener who will leave his name in history. Hearing this, the reporters become excited and ask Kannagi to say something about his life. Kannagi thinks to himself that there is no way such a narrative exists. At that moment, Kaisei tells Kannagi that he failed the exam this year as well and advises him that, no matter how bad the day is, he should always do what is right. Then Kannagi tells the reporters that Kaisei has always been a good friend to him and that he has always been grateful to Kaisei. Kaisei then tells the reporters that they are running out of time and should wrap up the story. He takes the reporters to show them his trophies. Meanwhile, Kannagi thinks to himself that no matter what bad things someone did, if they have the skills to become a hunter, everyone looks up to them and forgets everything else. Suddenly, Kaisei tells Kannagi to come to the progenitor's mausoleum after school. Shocked, Kannagi asks why. In his mind, Kannagi wonders what Kaisei plans to do now. With a smile, Kaisei tells Kannagi that he must want to take the exam again. Kannagi asks how, and Kaisei replies that he spoke to the association and they have allowed Kannagi to take the exam again. Kannagi asks why Kaisei would do this for him. Kaisei replies that it's just to build a good image, mentioning that the last photo was taken at the mausoleum. He says they can discuss the details later and insists that Kannagi must come. Hearing this, Kannagi wonders if he should trust Kaisei. He doesn't want Kaisei using him for his image, but it's an unexpected opportunity, and Kannagi is determined to pass the exam this time. The scene shifts to the next day, where the reporters take a photo of Kaisei in front of the mausoleum, labeling him a next-generation genius hunter who vows to protect humanity from monsters. The reporters thank Kaisei for taking the time to cover this story despite his busy schedule. Kaisei thanks the reporters for writing the article. As the reporters leave, Kaisei enters the mausoleum and asks his subordinate if they have found the entrance. It turns out they have, and Kaisei asks them to bring the goods to him. At that moment, Kannagi arrives and asks Kaisei what he and his friends are doing. Kaisei replies that they are on a treasure hunt. Frustrated, Kannagi states that this so-called treasure hunt is actually grave robbing and asks if Kaisei knows what lies down there. Kaisei dismissively responds that whatever it is, it's just an old mummified thing. Kaisei argues that he could become a billionaire by selling the items and questions why he should let them go. He dismisses the significance of the progenitor and the mausoleum as nonsense. Kannagi, who has always revered the progenitor and aspired to be like him, becomes enraged and tries to strike Kaisei. However, Kaisei steps forward and kicks Kannagi hard in the stomach, causing him to fall to the ground. At that moment, Kaisei's friends emerge with the items they found. Kaisei declares that these items will ensure his comfort forever. He then turns to Kannagi and reveals that he was looking for a student like him, someone desperate enough to believe in the lie of re-examination. Kaisei had heard a rumor that Kannagi often visited the library and thought he was the perfect target. Grabbing Kannagi, Kaisei states that when Kannagi's dream of becoming a hunter failed, he became frustrated and gave up. Kaisei plans to spin a story that, after stealing the founder's treasure that Kannagi always admired, Kannagi went missing, turning it into a tragic tale. The main news tomorrow will probably feature this story. Then Kaisei takes Kannagi to a cliff and states that Kannagi will be accused of stealing treasures from the progenitor's mausoleum, as the police would claim. After being in the hunter training center for 3 years, Kaisei pushes Kannagi into the river. As Kannagi struggles in the water, he wonders if this is the end. All the training and tests he took over and over again now seemed useless, and he would disappear without being remembered by anyone. At that moment, the souls of all the previous progenitors appear before Kannagi. They state that this kid is qualified and capable of making their wishes come true. Kannagi doesn't understand what's happening. The souls inform him that they are the heroic spirits slumbering in the mausoleum. Kannagi is shocked to see that these are all the progenitors he has heard and read about. They explain that the mark on Kannagi's hand is empty, though it currently lacks power. However, it can contain all the power that enters it. The souls tell Kannagi to choose one of the progenitors and make a contract with them, as they are all experts in their respective fields: magic, martial arts, swordsmanship, spearmanship, summoning, and alchemy. Whoever Kannagi chooses will grant him more power than he could imagine. The souls ask Kannagi whose power he wants. Kannagi states that he doesn't want to lose to anyone in this world and desires overwhelming power, enough to overcome all obstacles. The mark on Kannagi's hand begins to shine with a blue aura. The souls of the progenitors urge Kannagi to make a decision quickly. Kannagi declares that he wants the power of all the progenitors. The souls reply that Kannagi is being too greedy and that it's impossible to possess all their powers. They warn that no matter how powerful they are, Kannagi cannot have everything. Kannagi insists, telling them not to argue, as he wants all of their powers. The souls warn him that absorbing so much power might kill him. Despite this, Kannagi absorbs all the progenitors' powers, causing a huge splash in the river. Kaisei turns around and sees Kannagi, whose hair has turned light blue and is surrounded by a blue aura. Kannagi grabs a tree branch. Kaisei's friends start to mock Kannagi, asking what he plans to do with that stick. Kaisei orders his friends to take down Kannagi immediately. Hearing this, one of them conjures a red sword, claiming it is the weapon of an expert who has reached the highest level of mastery. As the man charges at Kannagi, Kannagi uses the tree branch as a sword and defeats him. With a serious expression, Kannagi demands to know where and how the man acquired the sword. Kaisei and his other friend are shocked by this turn of events. The other man then uses 7th grade magic to strike at Kannagi. However, Kannagi, without reciting any spells, uses a spell named Haddad and defeats him. Kaisei is astonished, unable to believe that Kannagi could take down an opponent with a mere twig and use magic without reciting a spell. Kaisei reflects on how this situation resembles the tales from 100 years ago. A swordsman who defeated 10,000 soldiers and a mage who could wield all magic without reciting spells. It is just like the exaggerated myths of the awakeners buried in the progenitor's mausoleum, whose souls now reside within Kannagi Minato, all 106 progenitors. Kannagi thinks this situation is amazing. His body is now inhabited by the spirits of the progenitors through the empty mark. He feels a surge of joy. Meanwhile, the souls inside Kannagi are conversing and complaining about the lack of space and how they are experiencing their first sense of freedom in hundreds of years. Kannagi reflects that he has read biographies of great people so many times that he has memorized their contents. The progenitors from those biographies are now inside him. The progenitors are excited and propose a competition to see who can take over Kannagi's body. At that moment, one of the legendary progenitor's souls addresses Kannagi. Kannagi recognizes the voice of Hinoki Ryuichiro, the legendary swordsman who defeated 10,000 soldiers with a twig. Hinoki remarks that his name is still famous even in future generations. He then asks Kannagi what his plans are. When Kannagi inquires if Hinoki is referring to Kaisei, Hinoki replies that there is something else Kannagi should be concerned about. With that, Kannagi moves forward. Seeing this, Kaisei commands to stop moving forward and prepares to strike. However, Kannagi punches Kaisei, sending him flying into a tree, which is then enveloped by a dark aura. The scene shifts to the city, where a wolf monster has emerged from the tower and is attacking. Among the crowd, a hunter defeats the wolf with a single decisive strike. The new hunters are impressed to see an A-class monster taken down with one strike, which is what they expect from an S-rank hunter. The hunter is identified as Kisaragi, an S-rank hunter. Kannagi wonders how Kaisei is faring, recalling Kaisei's previous interview where he described himself as a rising star. Kisaragi feels a sense of responsibility toward Kaisei. If Kaisei gains attention, it could increase the popularity of Kisaragi's guild as well. Suddenly, Kisaragi senses dark energy, which most of the new hunters cannot withstand. He realizes that the aura pressure is too much for B, or A-rank hunters, indicating that the threat is likely an S-class or higher monster requiring a large-scale coordinated attack. The scene then returns to the mausoleum. A dark monster emerges in front of Kannagi and Kaisei. Shocked, Kaisei is bewildered by the presence of the monster and its sudden appearance. Kannagi explains that it is because Kaisei disturbed the mausoleum, where one of the tower bosses was sealed. Hinoki tells Kannagi that among the monsters in the tower, some escaped death with dormant skills, and the monster before them is called the Bell of Nothingness. Hinoki further explains that this monster emits a poisonous aura that can incapacitate humans within a few kilometers. It was a common monster in the past, but it seems too powerful for young people today. Seeing the monster, Kaisei attempts to flee. Kannagi advises him not to move, as it would make Kaisei the monster's first target. The monster then attacks Kaisei, taking him down. Hinoki then asks Kannagi if he will completely relinquish his body to him, as Hinoki is the most powerful swordsman. In his mind, Hinoki plans to take advantage of the chaos and seize control of Kannagi's mark. Kannagi tells Hinoki that he is willing to do that. Seeing this, the other progenitors become angry with Hinoki for attempting to take over Kannagi's body. Kannagi then announces that he will allow everyone to take control of his body. The progenitors are surprised by this statement. Kannagi asserts that he will surpass them all, and in his mind, he thinks that this is a power he must overcome someday. He wants to understand its full extent, which is why he wants all the legendary progenitors to demonstrate their true powers. Hinoki is puzzled by Kannagi's determination and suggests they should proceed properly. Kannagi then attacks the monster using Hinoki's sword technique, successfully damaging parts of it. He follows up by using the powers of the other legendary progenitors, striking the monster with each of their abilities. Finally, Kannagi combines mage magic and Hinoki's sword technique to deliver a decisive strike, defeating the monster. Meanwhile, a crow watches Kannagi's fight. The scene then shifts to the city, where a man is talking on the phone. He is surprised to hear that the monster, which had been emitting such intense energy, has been defeated. The man mentions that he was heading in the direction of the monster. He then inquires if there was a powerful hunter nearby. The person on the other end of the phone explains that they found the video through their crow summon and reveals that it was a student from the Hunter Training Center who defeated the monster. The man talking on the phone is Ichihara Midori, the world's strongest awakened, and he is eager to meet Kannagi. After Ichihara defeats the monsters, he calls the director to ask if the director has reviewed the video sent via the crow. He mentions that the student, Minato Kannagi, is the one who took down the monster. However, this student had struggled to pass the hunter exam for 3 consecutive years. Ichihara expresses his disbelief and requests a favor from the director. The scene shifts to the Hunter Training Center, where students are discussing the intense aura they felt. Many students are still feeling unwell and unable to move. One student boasts to his friend that he was the one who defeated the monster. His friend dismisses this claim, noting that it has been 10 years since an S-class or higher monster appeared, and there were rumors that a student from their school was responsible for taking it down. Kannagi, walking with a stick, overhears the students discussing the events of the previous night. As he walks, a student pushes him, causing him to fall to the ground. Kannagi reflects that while it was fortunate he defeated the monster, the influence of the progenitors using their powers had an impact on him. Kannagi's whole body is shattered. Hinoki urges him to regain his composure, reminding him that he had expressed a desire to surpass the progenitors. Motivated by this, Kannagi responds affirmatively, determined to do so. Hinoki observes that the modern awakeners are significantly below the level of the progenitors, noting that their abilities are only marginally better than those of average people. He remarks that if the tower had appeared now, the world would have been destroyed instantly. As Kannagi attempts to get up, Hinoki suddenly senses great power emanating from someone within the school. Kannagi inquires about this, but Hinoki dismisses it as inconsequential. At that moment, a student approaches Kannagi and instructs him to come quickly. Kannagi apologizes, speculating that this may be related to the discharge process. At the training center, candidates are given 3 opportunities to take the hunter exam. Having exhausted his chances, Kannagi is no longer eligible to take the exam through the training center and must retake the general admission exam. The student clarifies that this situation is not about the lost opportunities, but rather an urgent re-examination that Kannagi must attend immediately. Kannagi is surprised by the news. The other students question if there is a re-examination system for the hunter exam. As Kannagi steps outside, he resolves to do his best, even though he knows it won't be perfect. The first challenge is a 100-meter run, with an average time of 3.6 seconds and the best time at 2.7 seconds. One of the students comments that Kannagi is a well-known, long-term training center student, speculating that perhaps the Hunter Association felt sympathy for him after his repeated failures and decided to give him another chance. To their astonishment, Kannagi completes the 100-meter run in just 1.6 seconds, the 3,000-meter run in 1 minute and 17 seconds, and performs 840 push-ups in 2 minutes. For the bench press, Kannagi lifts 1,280 kilograms. The students are amazed, seeing that all previous records have been shattered by more than double. They declare that Kannagi is a monster. Kannagi then asks Hinoki if the progenitors lent their strength to him for this event. Hinoki replies that no one helped Kannagi, as all the progenitors are merely observing. The scene shifts to the director's room. Ichihara's assistant shows him the current records of Kannagi Minato. Observing the records, Ichihara remarks that they are impressive. The director informs Ichihara that upon receiving the request for a re-examination, they were puzzled by the circumstances. The director adds that while Kannagi's abilities are indeed remarkable, there is a significant issue with measuring his mana. The student has scored consistently across all tests for 3 years, which suggests that Kannagi's mana is effectively 0. The director doubts the utility of getting their hopes up. Ichihara's assistant expresses skepticism about the claim of Kannagi having 0 mana. Ichihara, however, remains calm and suggests they simply observe Kannagi for now. The scene shifts to the mana measurement station, where the instructor instructs Kannagi to turn the windmill using mana for 30 seconds. The number of revolutions achieved will be recorded. Kannagi reflects that despite his efforts over the past 3 years, the windmill never seemed to move. He has never felt mana, let alone managed to control it. Kannagi realizes that it's all about the cycle, starting from the tip of his right foot, moving around, and then returning to the tip of the right foot. He accelerates this flow through his breathing and then channels it out through the palm of his hand. As the test begins, Kannagi releases his mana, causing the windmill to start spinning. The windmill accelerates at an incredible speed, leaving the instructor stunned and unable to keep track of the records. Eventually, the windmill breaks down, and the fan flies straight into the director's office. Ichihara's assistant asks what is happening, and Ichihara responds that Kannagi seems to be a case similar to his own. It has been a long time since someone has been so immeasurable. Back on the ground, everyone, including Kannagi himself, is astonished by the event. The instructor informs Kannagi that he has passed the hunter exam. The crowd erupts in cheers for Kannagi, who has not only passed but also broken all the records. Kannagi thanks the instructor for his support. Kannagi can't believe that he has passed the exam. On the other hand, Hinoki considers this outcome to be expected, given that the powers of the progenitors have awakened the dormant ability in Kannagi's mark. Hinoki smiles, realizing that Kannagi was not just an ordinary student with an empty mark. He reflects that it was worth waiting hundreds of years for this moment, and believes Kannagi might fulfill the progenitor's wishes. Suddenly, a radiant aura appears before Kannagi. Hinoki recognizes it as the same massive energy he felt earlier that morning. The figure reveals itself to be Ichihara. Kannagi is stunned to see Ichihara Midori, the strongest awakener of this era. He is puzzled as to why someone like Ichihara is present. Ichihara shakes Kannagi's hand and congratulates him on passing the hunter exam. Kannagi wonders how Ichihara knows his name. Ichihara then explains that there will be an additional test, delivering a corner blow to the world's strongest. Kannagi is shocked to hear this. Ichihara Midori, 23 years old, is an awakener who became a hunter at the age of 9, delivering an outstanding performance. No one would dare to challenge him, as Ichihara is regarded as the strongest in the world, having defeated 1,000 monsters in a single battle. Weak monsters or hunters are overwhelmed by Ichihara's mere gaze. He single-handedly dealt with the Pandemonium incident 10 years ago and the Kyushu outbreak 5 years ago. Ichihara is a true living legend. Hinoki, excited, tells Kannagi to switch places with him. The students are astonished to see Ichihara there. Ichihara explains to Kannagi that the rules are simple. If Kannagi can hit Ichihara within 1 minute, he wins. There are no penalties, and Ichihara will only attack once every 10 seconds, taking it easy and not using any skills. Ichihara then summons various weapons, from which Kannagi can choose. Shocked, Kannagi wonders when Ichihara acquired these weapons and what the purpose of this additional exam is. Now, Kannagi must face Ichihara Midori for 1 minute. Kannagi asks Ichihara if it is permissible for him to use a weapon. Ichihara replies that it is, as his body is stronger than any sword. No matter how powerful a sword Kannagi brings, Ichihara can cut it with ease. Demonstrating his prowess, Ichihara effortlessly slices the sword in half. Kannagi is stunned by this display of skill. Hinoki, astonished, tells Kannagi to switch places with him, expressing disbelief that such a person exists, and remarks that this era is not so bad after all. Kannagi realizes that Hinoki is also excited, understanding that Ichihara's extraordinary talent has even piqued the interest of a progenitor. Kannagi knows there is little chance of winning, but resolves to give it his best effort. As the other students gather to watch the match between Ichihara and Kannagi, Hinoki, frustrated, insists that Kannagi switch with him, but Kannagi remains resolute. With the timer started by Ichihara, Kannagi grabs a sword and charges at Ichihara with full force. Hinoki wonders what Kannagi is trying to achieve. Meanwhile, Kannagi acknowledges that this approach is reckless but believes that to become a legend himself, he must test his limits against the legendary figure of this era. As Kannagi strikes at Ichihara, Ichihara effortlessly dodges the attacks while using his phone. The gathered students are astonished to see Ichihara evading Kannagi's strikes with such ease, even managing to check his phone. Kannagi continues to swing his sword from various angles, but Ichihara remains unharmed. Some students comment that nothing seems to be working, while one observes that Kannagi's strikes appear relentless. Kannagi attempts a diagonal strike, followed by left and right slashes, but Ichihara avoids each one effortlessly. Kannagi is impressed by this, noting that his body moves in sync with his thoughts and that he never seems to tire, possibly due to the progenitor's powers. He feels a significant difference in his body compared to before. At that moment, Ichihara places his finger on Kannagi's forehead and prepares to flick it. However, Kannagi manages to dodge the flick, which subsequently creates a crack in the ground. Kannagi realizes that nothing is going to be easy in this battle. Had Kannagi not avoided it, he might have sustained serious injuries. On the other hand, Ichihara finds it unusual that he cannot control his strength. Kannagi feels no real threat from Ichihara, but he realizes that if this continues, he might be in serious danger. He recalls how he managed to defeat the monster earlier and shifts his stance to strike Ichihara again. The other students are surprised to see that Kannagi has increased his speed, but Ichihara easily dodges the attack. Ichihara notes that while Kannagi's sword movements have become faster, he was far more agile when he defeated the S-class monster. The atmosphere around Kannagi seems to have changed, leading Ichihara to wonder if there is some sort of trigger condition or if Kannagi is concealing something. As it is time for Ichihara to strike, he dodges Kannagi's attack and flicks him in the chest. Kannagi is sent flying into the wall, finding the situation abnormal and perplexing, given that his opponent is the world's strongest awakener and the force of the attack was immense. If Kannagi had received such an attack in the past, he would have already been dead. He finds this experience exhilarating and can't believe how much stronger he has become. Despite his current skills, Kannagi realizes that passing this test seems unlikely. Nevertheless, he intends to fight with all his might for the remaining time. Kannagi closes the distance with Ichihara, who steps aside and apologizes, noting that Kannagi only now seems to grasp the situation. As the 30 seconds elapse, Ichihara strikes Kannagi on the neck, causing him to fall to the ground. Ichihara thinks that while Kannagi has potential, it is not yet sufficient to meet his expectations. As Ichihara prepares to leave, he is surprised to sense a dense energy emanating from Kannagi. Turning around, Ichihara notices that Kannagi's hair has turned blue again, indicating that Hinoki has swapped places with him while he was unconscious. Hinoki now has full control over Kannagi's body and suggests to Ichihara that they should continue their sparring. Ichihara, excited, realizes that this is the energy he has been sensing for a while, which caused him difficulty in controlling his strength. He wonders whether this is the result of someone else's skill or an innate ability, but there is no doubt that Kannagi has transformed into a formidable opponent. Hinoki goes for a strike, but Ichihara easily dodges it. Ichihara notes that Kannagi's movements have changed. Both his speed and power are on an entirely different level than before, and his swordsmanship has improved significantly. As Hinoki strikes with incredible speed, Ichihara continues to evade the attacks, backing off as Hinoki uses a diagonal sword strike. Despite the increased intensity, Ichihara manages to avoid the attack by ducking. The students, alarmed by the escalating combat, begin to move away from the building. Meanwhile, Ichihara observes that Kannagi's swordplay has evolved from being cautious to fluid and instinctive. It's as if Kannagi now anticipates Ichihara's movements and responds with the natural grace of flowing water, a sword that moves freely and unpredictably, like a powerful wave. As the 10-second mark approaches, Ichihara smiles and remarks that Kannagi's skill is truly worthy of defeating an S-class monster. He then goes to strike at Hinoki, but Hinoki deftly dodges the attack and counters with a sword infused with aura. Ichihara leaps into the air to avoid the strike, his agility reminiscent of Gojo. With a smile, Ichihara comments that he finds the combat truly thrilling. The students, watching in amazement, are surprised to see Ichihara excelling only in defense. Angered, Hinoki demands that Ichihara discard the rules, warning that if Ichihara continues in this manner, Hinoki will end up defeating him. As Hinoki lunges forward to close the distance, Ichihara decides to get more serious. He kicks a rock towards the weapons he had previously summoned, causing them to rain down from the sky. Ichihara then leaps into the air, seizing a spear, and charges at Hinoki. Hinoki meets Ichihara's attack with a counterstrike, and the two engage in a fierce weapon fight. They appear evenly matched as they battle with their weapons, thrilling the onlookers. The students are stunned by the display, witnessing both combatants fully embracing the fight with palpable excitement. All the progenitors are watching the battle with great interest, finding it thrilling to see Ichihara going head-to-head with Hinoki. They are thoroughly enjoying the spectacle. Kannagi is also observing the fight, and the mage progenitor notices that Kannagi is intently analyzing Hinoki's fighting style. As the match progresses, Hinoki's sword breaks. Ichihara, finding the fight exhilarating, revels in the excitement rather than boredom. With Hinoki now weaponless, Ichihara considers whether to use a blunt weapon or a bow. Smiling with the same enthusiasm Gojo showed when he fought Toji, Ichihara remarks that there are only 10 seconds remaining and wonders what Hinoki will do next. Hinoki then leaps towards a building, retrieves a student's sword, and states that he is borrowing it. At that moment, Ichihara moves behind Hinoki and delivers a powerful mana-infused punch, causing a massive explosion. Despite the attack, Hinoki manages to evade and prepares to strike back at Ichihara with his newly acquired sword. Ichihara, smiling, effortlessly dodges all of Hinoki's strikes. He then grabs the windmill fan with his incredible strength and throws it toward Hinoki with full force. To Ichihara's surprise, Hinoki manages to slice the windmill fan into small pieces using his one-dice sword technique. Impressed by this, Ichihara observes Hinoki's move and sees an opening. Hinoki attempts to strike Ichihara, but Ichihara cuts Hinoki's sword into pieces. Ichihara then channels mana into his hand and delivers a powerful final attack, making it his most forceful move yet. Hinoki, believing he is defeated, is taken aback when Kannagi suddenly switches places with him. Kannagi deflects Ichihara's attack with a flick of his hand, altering its direction and shocking both Ichihara and Hinoki. However, this action results in severe injury to Kannagi's hand. The battle between these ultimate talents is an endless contest, akin to a breathtaking chess game between two masters with no clear match. Impressed, Hinoki acknowledges that Kannagi has blazed a new path. As the match progresses, the intensity continues to rise. Kannagi sees an opening and attempts to punch Ichihara, but to his surprise, Ichihara blocks the punch just before it makes contact. Kannagi realizes that he cannot reach Ichihara, but Ichihara places his hand on Kannagi's cheek and, smiling, informs him that he has passed the exam. As they come down, Ichihara calls for his assistant, Rin. When Rin arrives, she asks Ichihara how the exam went. Ichihara replies that Kannagi passed, and that it was an enjoyable experience. He also notes that Kannagi's arm is seriously injured and instructs Rin to treat him. The students begin to cheer for Kannagi upon hearing from Ichihara that he managed to pass the additional exam, which means Kannagi successfully landed a hit on Ichihara. Rin tells Kannagi to remain still while she tends to his arm. Surprised and grateful, Kannagi thanks Rin for her help. Rin also congratulates him on passing the exam. Kannagi is astonished to learn that he landed a hit on Ichihara and passed the exam. From behind, Ichihara reminds Kannagi that he did indeed succeed, startling him. Ichihara then adds that he feels he might have awarded a few extra points. Although a pass is still a pass, Kannagi's performance, particularly his continuous attacks, was impressive. Kannagi had thought it was Hinoki who put him through his paces, but Ichihara appreciated how Kannagi skillfully dodged his final strike. Ichihara remarked that it was truly amazing and that Kannagi should be proud of his achievement. Kannagi then inquires about what happens next now that he has passed the exam. The scene shifts to Kannagi's house, where his mother asks how many people will be visiting their home today. As Kannagi cleans the house, he replies that he's not sure, maybe one or two. Kannagi's mother comments that it's a lovely day, especially since Kannagi passed the hunter exam and even attracted the attention of the renowned Ichihara. She has always believed that Kannagi would succeed if he put his mind to it. Hearing this, Kannagi smiles with happiness. However, his mother then expresses concern about whether it's appropriate for someone as famous as Ichihara to visit their modest home, feeling it is too shabby. Kannagi reassures her that Ichihara is not like that. After finishing the cleaning, Kannagi goes to his room. The scene then shifts to the day of the match, where Rin has Ichihara in a leg lock. Ichihara reminds Kannagi that he had previously mentioned if Kannagi won, he would become Ichihara's colleague. Kannagi replies that he does not recall hearing that. Ichihara then notes that there are many people watching and asks if he can visit Kannagi's house this evening to discuss the details and present the options regarding their real enemy. Kannagi wonders what Ichihara means by real enemy, as the tower was destroyed by the progenitor a long time ago, and the current role of hunters is to defeat monsters that escape from dimensional cracks. Kannagi questions whether there could be something more. Hinoki then tells Kannagi to get up, causing Kannagi to ask in shock why all the legendary progenitors have gathered. Hinoki explains that they have been discussing something important. Kannagi asks what they have been discussing and, alarmed, inquires if they have decided who will take over his body. Hinoki was about to say something when Kannagi heard a noise and went to check, wondering if Ichihara had arrived. As Kannagi came downstairs, he was surprised by the darkness and shocked to find his mother lying on the ground. Rushing to her side, Kannagi saw a man sitting at the table, eating food. Kannagi asked the man who he was, what he was doing there, and what he had done to his mother. The man introduced himself as Haitani Goro, an S-rank hunter and one of Ichihara's colleagues. Angered, Kannagi attempted to punch Haitani, but Haitani easily dodged the strike and asked if Kannagi wanted to fight. Kannagi remembered how his father had died, how his mother had raised him alone, worn old shoes to work to provide him a better life, and always made dinner for him. Filled with rage, Kannagi demanded to know what Haitani had done to his mother. Hinoki, observing the situation, remarked that Kannagi's opponent was a modern-age S-rank hunter and that the situation was advantageous. Although Hinoki could sense that Haitani was a copy of Ichihara, this fight would allow Hinoki and the other progenitors to determine what to do about Haitani. Meanwhile, Kannagi, enveloped in a blue aura, seethed with anger.